Welcome to the Core Experience, your connection to community, business, and the people who make it all happen with your host, Brandon Suba.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Core Experience podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Suba, a treasury relationship manager at Core Bank. But deep down inside, I love being on the microphone, and I love hearing people's stories. I love hearing their experiences. And today, you're going to get a lot of both. A lot of both. One great thing about Core Bank is they're always striving to be better. Actually, our current saying is build better. And the guy sitting next to me is the reason I think we have that saying. Isn't that right, Dan? Didn't you help?
Maybe had a little, but I had some great help.
A little bit. Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And so that's why we wanted to have Dan on, is so that he can kind of talk about what he's worked or what he's done personally in his personal experiences, but then also what he's done with Core and how he's really just helping the organization focus on what we do well, correct the things that maybe we don't do so well, and if it's just noise and garbage, get rid of it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, I'll give you a formal introduction here. Dan and I, well, I'll tell you how we met in a minute, because I do like that story. Okay, we are pleased to have Dan Krick on from Kusudi, right?
Kusudi.
Kusudi, okay.
Yeah.
Kusudi Group
Consulting.
Thank you.
Here, let me just.
Do you want
me to take this? Is it easier? No.
Let's just switch seats.
No, it's all good. You're wonderful.
Dan is leading the value-based leadership group. Dan, thank you for coming on. And yeah, you could host the rest of this.
I can't do it justice.
No.
I know you can do it because we've done it before.
We've done this before. So Dan,
are you gonna share that?
I can.
Let's
okay.
just go.
All right, we got two stories right out of the chute, because why wouldn't we? So first off, Dan and I have already actually done this podcast before. And if you do any type of recording, be it video or audio, there are a lot of cords that are involved. Even in the Bluetooth world, there's a lot of cords. And if you could see, if you're watching on YouTube, if you could see behind us, there are a lot of cords. Sound check went perfect. That's my mixer, so I know it very, very well. These are my microphones. All the things were great. But one cord, the little audio cord from the mixer to the camera, died. And so we have a video of us having a great time.
Oh, amazing time.
On mute.
Yeah, on mute. Yeah. So before we started this afternoon, Brandon and I were having a little sidebar, and I really think we should have just had voiceovers done. And I was thinking maybe Charlton Heston, Matthew McConaughey. I want that voice.
Yeah,
and that would have been fascinating to listen to.
That's what I wanted. William Shatner.
Perfect. Anyway,
okay.
So this ought to be good. I mean, we had the dry run.
Oh yeah. I did this weird sports announcing thing for this game in the networking world we were playing, and my buddy and I would recap every week the points, and we always did 3 takes. Yeah. And by golly, we almost always used our third take. But that was much more scripted than what this is. We have questions. Otherwise, awesome. We're flying by the seat of our pants here at the Core Experience. So Dan, we have rooms throughout Core Bank that you can rent. And so Dan lives in Lincoln, comes to Omaha to help Core. And so he rented out one of the rooms, and leave it up to me to just go introduce myself. I see someone sitting in the building, might as well. And so I go and I introduce myself. Or was it Jersey Mike's first and then I introduced myself?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think there was a brief introduction.
Yeah,
in my rented office.
There you go. Yeah. This is who I am. Who are you? Great.
Right.
And then not but a few minutes later, we saw each other at Jersey Mike's, and we were like, well, I guess this is meant to be. And then we sat down the next time you were in and actually chatted a little bit more. And as we peeled back some of the layers of who we are, we're like, oh my gosh, we really do get along pretty well here, don't we?
You don't keep many people as strangers, though.
I try not to.
Yeah.
I don't know when it turned, but I'm sad that we tell our children someone you don't know is a stranger, but then on the flip side, a stranger is just somebody you've never met.
Yeah, that's right. Waiting to be a part of the collection.
So, but children don't talk to strangers, or you end up doing podcasts with them. Months later, that's what we did. All right. Okay. So let's dig in to the fun part. So Dan, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got going with what you do. Because again, I know it's quite the history. You didn't just jump into this.
No. So I'm an HR guy by 35 years. And I was a failed art major. Somehow I got through college. It led into grad school and found myself working in a variety of HR roles, from British Petroleum early on in my career in Chicago, the Imes Pet Food Company, Procter & Gamble, a job in Lincoln, Nebraska, got us back after being out of state for 15 years. And about 3 years ago, I led a reorganization. And the interesting part was, I'm leading this reorganization. And when it was all said and done, I looked at the role that I had left, and there wasn't much to it. So the crossroads was, do I stay on in a scaled down role, or do I do something different? And 3 of our 4 kids, Brandon, own their own business. And they said, well, Dad, why don't you do your own thing? And I tried to make this excuse of, well, I'm 56 and you're 25. There's a big difference. And they said, Dad, that's an excuse. You're all about helping people, live their passions and purposes. Yeah, they're using my words against me. And so here I am. 3 years later, I'm an independent consultant with the Kusudi Group. And group is a bit of a misnomer. It's me. It's an 85-pound Bernese Mountain Dog. It's a cat, and my wife that checks on me to make sure I am creating some billable hours up there in that spare bedroom. And no, it's been awesome. It was a little scary change, and but it's been amazing. I get what I love what I do. I get to do what I love to do, and meet amazing people along the way. So and I do it for more organizations than working for a single organization. So it's all good. Yeah.
So cool. Kusudi.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, it's always fun to hear where names come from.
Yeah.
I mean, my LLC is Prestige Worldwide, and that is 100% from Step Brothers.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yes. When we were trying to, because I was contracted with a company, and so when we were trying to come up with an LLC, I was trying to, Stuba Enterprises my parents have, and all these others, and my wife goes, well, what about Prestige Worldwide?
Yeah.
And I was like,
oh, yeah.
No. And if you don't know, Step Brothers is a Will Ferrell movie. It's not
wonderful.
The most appropriate, but how they use the LLC is quite funny. I won't go into too much detail. And so I went to my CPA and I said, well, here's some names we're thinking, but this is kind of our top. And he looks at me and he goes, my son and I watched Step Brothers yesterday. I'll see what I can do. Get a call 2 days later, and I have Prestige Worldwide LLC
my
for
gosh.
Nebraska.
I love it. I love it.
But Kusudi.
Yeah, so Kusudi, at least you picked names that are pronounceable. Kusudi always got
Kasudo.
Not bad. So Kusudi came from, the background was, for a lot of years, even when I was working full-time corporate HR roles, people would somehow find me and say, hey, I've got a little business. I need somebody to help me with strategic planning, or somebody needs some coaching. And so it really didn't fit into like me working full-time on this, but I'd take these gigs. And one of my life dreams that I established years ago was to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And Brandon, the funny thing about it is I wrote it down on this dream list. I didn't even know where Kilimanjaro was, or Tanzania. I knew it was in Africa somewhere, but I thought, I want to do that. And so in 2012, myself, my brother, a good friend, and 2 of his friends, we did the 10-day climb and experienced that. And on the way down, I was kind of like thinking, wow, this is really like a life-changing experience. And started talking to the guide, and I said, what's the Swahili word for purpose? And he looked at me and said, Kusudi. I said, I'm going to need you to write that down. So I handed him a Sharpie, wrote it on my duffel bag, actually, and that was the founding of Kusudi Group. And so really what I do, everything I really do relative to my work, whether it's individuals or organizations, is really all purpose driven. So hard to pronounce, a funny name, but that's the background on it. Yeah.
If anyone's doing the math, we've done this before, so I knew how to say it last time, but threw an O in it today, because that's just the kind of day we're having.
Yeah.
Well, purpose driven. That is really what you speak, and that is how we see it at Core Bank. So, what are some of the goals with an organization and working with Core Bank? The value based leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so my relationship with Core goes back 2 years ago. And, my first meeting, I think it was John and Mike and Suzanne kind of vetting out a consultant to help with some organizational structure and strategy topics, and great conversation. But in the course of that first conversation, Brandon, we were talking about the bank, and I had checked out the website, and there were all these cool phrases, right? They were really like, oh my gosh,
recipe of awesomeness.
Exactly, like all this stuff. And I put the question out, and I said, so is this stuff like in play, or is it inspirational? Kind of like, is it real, or is it what you want to be? And the three of them, to their credit, kind of looked around like, well, maybe a little bit more inspirational. And so that began the journey with Core Bank, is helping Core really identify purpose, which is why you exist. And the values basically represent the behavior around your purpose. So how you go about doing it, the expected behavior. And that's been a 2-year process. And 9 months ago, we grabbed 18 leaders, and we've worked it.
You have.
We've worked it from the inside out, and we just graduated 2 weeks ago. But I want to tell you, when you work something like this from the inside out, you really are spending a lot of time exploring self, exploring why do you exist, your own values, how do they match with an organization's values. And I got to tell you, it was quite an experience. I just felt privileged to be with those 18. We had some very real, very vulnerable conversations along the way. And that's what a value-based organization is. You will not have perfection, but you'll have the real types of conversations that come with a purpose-driven organization. So, yeah, we had a lot of fun, but we worked it. They pushed me.
Good.
And I hope they would say that I made them a little uncomfortable as well.
Oh, I haven't heard it directly, but yes, okay. I believe so. Now, I will round out my second year at Core Bank in August. So I think our timelines are not that far off.
Exactly. And
what I love is I have fully experienced the value driven base core.
Yeah.
Right. It's evolved a lot in just the last 2 years, by all means. But what I love is the word transparent is used a lot. They're bringing the teams together. When I say teams, I mean the whole bank together so that we can talk about these things as a bank.
Yeah.
And coming from a larger bank, U.S. Bank specifically, none of those conversations happened. I mean, if they did, they were so high up in the tallest U.S. Bank building, and by the time it got to me, it was a mortgage lender. Well, you're doing good or not, right? And that was all. Yeah. And so it's just really neat to see the evolution of the bank and the transparency. And honestly, I think the culture has improved a lot. And I saw the good culture.
Yeah.
From the beginning.
Absolutely.
But even from when I've came on, it's just been really neat to see those leaders that you took and doing something different. And I think that coincides with if you do it like it's always been done, you're never going to grow.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to change, if you're willing to have those hard conversations, it's amazing what will change. And it's been neat to watch.
Yeah.
It's been really neat to watch.
Well, lots of times when you talk purpose and values, I've had leaders talk about, that all sounds good, but that's pretty soft. I want a culture of accountability and people that get stuff done and blah, blah. And purpose and values, there's nothing soft about it. Mm-mm. It's as soon as you put those words down on the paper or you put them on the wall in the room or in the entryway, basically you're setting yourself up for criticism and comparison and cynicism, right? Because, hey, if you say that's who we are, and if I don't see it, then what does it mean? So lots of times when we do this work, I really encourage leaders, hey, take a little time and think about this, because in doing so, you're setting yourself up for debate and challenge and skepticism and all those things that come with it. Now, the beauty is the wonderful things that come from a purpose-driven and value-based organization, I think are pretty special. Mm. And once you've been in one, Brandon, you'll never want to work for anything else, or you'll want to create that at the next opportunity. And so I think that's kind of where we are. We're having some ebb and flow with it. We're having some real conversations, but we can do that because we know why we exist and the expected behavior. And that's all okay. We will not have perfection, but we'll strive for becoming better versions of ourselves as individuals and as an organization. And that's that's really at the essence of why you do this. Yeah.
The quote I love is disappointment is directly correlated to expectation. And I learned that on the road working with networking groups. And a lot of the times I hear these famous quotes that people are just inspired by. And in my head, Dan, I hate to say it, I'm like, I don't know what that means. Yeah. One of the most classic is culture eats strategy for breakfast. I heard that in this big seminar and everybody, their lights turned on. Yeah. And my attic was just dark. It wasn't until about 3 years later it clicked. I was like, oh, now I see what he was saying. Yeah. But the saying disappointment is directly correlated with expectation has stuck with me, even to the point that when I am speaking with a client, I will say, I need to know what your expectations are so I can meet and surpass them. Yeah. But if we don't have this conversation, I may disappoint you and I won't even know. I would never know.
Yeah. 100%. Well, the big thing that I really think is with purpose is it just filters out everything else. Years ago, Rick Warren wrote the bestseller Purpose Driven Life. And I mean, it was a good book. I don't think it's that it wasn't his giftedness as a writer as much as the subject matter, I think, was really compelling for people. And, understanding what that purpose is really filters out the things you don't want. Right. And same way with businesses, once you know what your purpose is, it's like, okay, we can make decisions off of that. We know how we lead, all those things. Value-based leadership, we built that thing from the inside out. Once we knew our purpose, our values, like Lindsay and I are sitting down looking at this stuff, and these are the things we got to include. These are the topics we need to really help leaders with, having transparent conversations, being vulnerable, all the things that when you're building better, how do you go about doing that? Well, we're going to do it off these set of 6 values. So, yeah.
What would you say is one of the biggest achievements you've had working with CORE in the last few years?
This is this is going to sound really. It's like, really, that was a big achievement. We had as part of the value-based leadership, there's been a number of them. Like I've seen some amazing individual growth, but one of them was we had a leadership panel partway through our value-based leadership program, and we were going to invite the leadership team in and throw some questions their way and have this this kind of structured panel discussion, and it turned into a bit of a free-for-all. Ooh. Like the stuff came, okay? And this, like, we just go off script. And there's emotion. And, one time, I'm looking at some of the leaders, and, John and I have got to know each other well. And, John's probably thinking, what in the world is going on here? But the beauty of it, and I shared this, was I'm not sure that happens 2 years ago. I'm not sure it happens a year ago. The pineapple was out there. It was being cut. It was being chewed on, and some great discussion came out of it. Yeah, were there emotions? Yeah. Were there disagreements? Yeah. But the conversation happened, and that sounds like, an odd way to answer your question of what's success. But to me, that says people care enough that they're going to have the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because when you don't care, you avoid that conversation. I'm not going to invest. I'm not going to get emotional on this. I'm not going to push back on this, even though I may not believe it. To me, that was success because it was out there, and it didn't stop out there. It continued the rest of the day. I kind of called an audible on the planned curriculum and said, all right, now what do we do?
Let's keep doing this.
We tore the lid off of this thing, and guess what? We can't put it back in. So now we got to do something about it. So yeah, that was, I was really satisfied with that because people took great ownership of this culture. It's important to them, and when you see that, it says they give a darn. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Let's clarify one thing though for the listeners. You said the pineapple was out. They were chewing on. There was not a fruit salad involved. We have a definition of what a pineapple is. So could you dig into that just a little bit?
Exactly. Yeah, I need to clarify that. So we've used this analogy of pineapple, and it's this funny word for basically describing when we're going to have a real conversation. And Lindsay Waddell, I credit because she described this. You look at a pineapple and it's a bit prickly on the outside. You grab it, you grab it by the spines or on the outside. But if you can make it to the inside of that pineapple, there's some amazing fruit. And that's really what we want with pineapple discussions is like, hey, letting people know what I've got to say is important. I need to be heard. I will do the same for you in terms of making sure I'm hearing you properly, but we're going to have a real conversation. So we're going to have a little pineapple. So thanks for the request for clarification.
Of course. Yep. No, and we have pineapple moments. Of course, well, I should say we don't. We do, but it's not like we just live in them. But we open up conversations and say, if there's a pineapple moment, now is the time to really bring that in. And that is when we're together. That is when we have the president, the CEO, the CFO, everybody's up there ready to answer those questions. And again, coming from the environment I was in before, that just doesn't exist.
Oh, it's rare.
Beyond a lot of businesses, let alone a financial institute.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry, but financial institutes are just notorious for, well, this is the way it's always been done, or this is how we do it, or even worse, this is the regulation. Yeah. Yes, we have to be compliant. Yes, we have a whole department that keeps, I'm going to say me, but we'll say us compliant. Yeah. But we're willing to have those open conversations and just have, again, that transparency overall as a company.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because you think many times financial institutions, there's a hierarchy that you respect, and lots of times the messages are extremely filtered. As they're going through the various channels. And that's what I've really appreciated is that people wanting and desiring these conversations. And it doesn't happen unless it's really, it's modeled and, it becomes commonplace like, wow, you're really having that conversation. We're talking about real stuff. Yeah, because it is real.
Yeah, we're human. And we're spending half of our lives here. So let's make it worth our while.
Exactly.
Off script a little bit. I did have a listener question come in. Tammy, the listener, you might have met her once or twice if you think. But she says, we're a purpose-driven company through blogging, social media, all of those things. Can you elaborate a little bit more on, I guess it kind of sounds like the activities that are showing us that we are that purpose-driven?
In terms of how they're displayed and lived within core? Yeah. Is that the question? Yeah. Well, I think a number of things. You can't, when you work on becoming a purpose-driven and value-based organization, again, you do a lot of work to get to the point of, well, what is that purpose? And that's not work that's done overnight or by a marketing firm. That's really grabbing the essence of the difference you want to make in the world, right? And we had amazing input into that. And then the values with that. But if you stop there, you'll never achieve what that is. You have to start hardwiring that into your culture. Things like this, how you communicate, how you make decisions, where is collaboration, this investment in 18 leaders over 9 months. And if I showed you the 3-ring binders of the content that we covered, like just so much of it, because you have to hardwire it into how you do it. So you do it through the things that you do as an organization. Years ago, I did a lot of work with the Great Place to Work Institute out of San Francisco. And they're the same one that puts together the Fortune 100, a list of best companies. Okay. And Hal Adler was the CEO at the time. And the company I was with, we'd made the small list a couple of years, and we invited Hal out and we're talking to him, and like, Hal's $5,000 a day. So I'm trying to get my money's worth out of this. And, so I'm asking him questions like, he's like, just bring it on to me, right? Yeah. And at one point he leans back, he goes, this is all really good stuff. You've really done a lot of work. But he goes, I would, my advice would be, I would focus less on the what and more on the how. And Brandon, it was kind of like one of those like Yoda moments. Like in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm paying you $5,000. I need something like, give me some practical.
I don't want analogies.
But his point was really, it's not what, it's really how we do it. Companies communicate. How do they communicate? Mm-hmm. Right? Companies have recognition programs. How do they recognize? So much of that is based on your purpose, and should be based on the values. So if these are the values that you really subscribe to, then it hardwires how you do things, right? So your town hall, your all company meetings, recognition, your policies and practices, you really define that based on your values. So it's really more in the how than what it is, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One cool thing, we have kind of an intranet social media piece.
Yeah.
And we can do shout outs. We recognize people that have done great things. Man, that thing is active.
Awesome.
Now, I will say, Brandon Schrader is another relationship manager, and myself, we found out we have some of the same clothes. I guess you could say our wives maybe shop at the same place. And so strategically, we put an outfit together and we started twinning. Right.
Oh,
so we put the picture on our little social media thing, 20. Well, it has gotten so out of hand. I believe it was the loan servicing department, which is 6 to 7 people, depending on the day.
Yeah.
They all had matching outfits. Lindsay, who we've talked about, she's our chief people officer, and Michelle, who's on the people officer team also. They had pink pants, but I think the best was Adam, who does a lot with our training services. And when we get a new project, he gets to learn it and then teach us all. He had pink pants. I don't know if he owned them prior or not. So there was the twinning, all three of them had a black top and their pink pants on. So to say that you encouraged this or maybe you inspired this, it has definitely held.
Oh my gosh,
and we ran with it.
I love it.
We have
if there's photos of Adam in those pink pants, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, we can probably hunt that down for you. Now, it's not all just fun and games. It is fun, not all games, but we do recognize when a banker or an experience expert, as we call them, takes care of a client really well.
That's awesome.
Or one thing I like to do is if one of my treasury clients raves about their experience at a branch, I want to share that with everybody, because that's what gets lost, in my opinion, in the bigger banks is, when you have thousands of branches, you can't really celebrate every success story. You probably don't even know about them. Well, with us, though, that community, that culture, we are really inspired to express those. And how great does it feel when you just, in essence, did your job, taking care of a client, and then you're getting blown up, everywhere on how great it was. And so, again, be it the inspiration or whatever you did to really cultivate that, it's been really neat to watch that grow.
Well, just that example that you gave, Brandon, that's storytelling, and it's the folklore that creates and reinforces the behaviors you want. And, that's a form of recognition for individuals, gift cards and all things like that. But ultimately being recognized for, wow, that's a behavior that I took upon myself to do. And you guys are thanking me for it. You're telling stories about it, but it also gives everybody else the idea, oh, that's what the how is about. Yeah. That's how I'm, that's the freedom I'm given in terms of how I can use these values, and I can be curious and I can do these types of things, and it's reinforced here. That's amazing. Yeah.
Well, as we wrap this up, any final thoughts, final words to...
Well, I so appreciate the time, and one of the things when we did our dry run that we closed with, can we go there?
I want to. Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
I think it's the topic that we touched on, and it's a topic of love in the workplace.
And so, gosh, I wish we could even show the video. So how that was presented last time is, as you said, there's two things, and I don't remember what the first was because that was so long ago. I think it just kind of recapped everything, and you go, but the other piece, and you don't hear this a lot in the workplace, is love. Yeah. And there was a video that I saw of a business founder and the guy that wrote Chicken Noodle Soup for the Soul. Is that Jack Cannon, something along those lines? Regardless, we all know the book. Yeah. And one thing he said that's very important in the workplace is love. And I remember hearing that, and to me, society that I grew up in, love is more of an intimate, you marry the person you love, you love your children, and it was never in the workplace, right? Yeah. Like, gosh, you could even get written up if you tell somebody you love them. And to hear a famous, world famous author say that in business, this is important. That opened up my opportunity to say, love is important. If I'm asking somebody to help me with something that's probably not the most exciting, or what do you call it? What do they say? Eat the orange, eat the frog. Eat the frog. Maybe this is your frog.
Yeah.
But if you love me, you'll help me.
Absolutely. Yeah, you think about it, like when you're crazy in love, you do crazy things.
Yes.
Right? You think about, like, if I asked you for some of those stories, you're going to tell me these stories of what you did. And, I think of, like, when I'd fallen in love, and, my girlfriend, who became my wife now 34 years, when I was in grad school, I'd fire up my 74 Dart after my last class in Champaign, Illinois. And, I'd load up on, caffeine and drive 13 hours through the night and pull into Hastings, Nebraska. But love does crazy things like that. It's powerful. And so, years ago, I had an HR peer in Lincoln. He was the HR lead at Duncan Aviation, and the world lost him too soon. He passed away a few years, but I recall texting him one day, and he was like kind of my counselor outside. Like I could go to him and just pour my soul out. So I text him. I go, Mike, I really need to grab you for lunch if you're available. And I'm laying it all out. We're eating a sub sandwich. I must have these sub sandwich places. Anyway, long story short, I'm laying it all out, and he looks at me, Brandon, and he says, "Do you love the people you work with?" And I go, well, yeah, Mike, I like most of them. Some of them are a little bit more challenging. You said, no. Do you love the people you work with? And I paused there, and I thought, here it comes. And he said, I don't know how you can do your job if you don't love the people you work with. Mm-hmm. And it was like really profound. And he said, think about it like what you do when you think about the people in your life that you really love, and how you approach things, from change management initiatives, how you communicate, how you give. It's not a 50-50. Sometimes you're giving 95 and getting 5. And that's what you do when you're in love. And you think about them, and it's not soft leadership.
Right.
I've raised 4 kids. They're adults now, and sometimes, that was tough. You know what that's like.
Still love you.
I still love you. And Dad, I think I love you. But no, I think love and leadership, it's not talked about a lot, but I absolutely think if first you got to love yourself. You got to love what you do, and you got to love the people you do life with. Mm-hmm. And if that's the center of it, you'll have tough moments, you'll have challenges, but you'll have a better experience through it. So, yeah.
Now, one thing I will say, since we did the last recording, I did hear something about that love, and you challenge the people you love. You let the people you like slide.
Yeah.
And I think what you just said kind of caps
so
that.
True, Brandon.
If you like the people you work with, you know what? Jake didn't finish that report. I'll do it.
Yeah.
But when you love them, especially as a director role or as a leadership, you don't allow it.
Yeah.
You say,
spot on.
You say, Jake, you've done these 100 times.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing. Actually, the reason we asked you to do is you're the best at it.
Yeah.
I'm going to challenge you to have this done by tomorrow. I know it's 5 o'clock, but I'm going to challenge you. That's that love piece.
That's love.
And if you've had anybody in your life challenge you like that, it is because they love you. And I like your kid analogy. We don't challenge our kids because we think they're neat or they're cool. We challenge them because we love them. We know what they can do.
Yeah.
And and again, I think it's the stigma of the definition of what we see as love, especially growing up, right? Like your parents are always worried about who you're dating and all that.
Yeah.
But when you get into the real world, well, when you grow up, I don't know how you want to say that, but love is totally different. And if you love someone, you will do crazy things. You will challenge them. If you like someone, you'll just kind of, well, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, that's a perfect way to describe it. Yeah.
Well, then we're going to end there.
Love you, man.
Love you too, brother. Love you too. All right. So for more information on the Core Experience podcast, you can always go to corebank.com/podcast, or you can email coreexperience@corebank.com. Again, thank you for trudging back out here, Dan. I think this one went just as well as the first. And again, there's a video of us out there.
That's right.
Us being really excited about stuff with no sound, and I can't imagine what that looks like. And for everybody else, we look forward to talking to you on a future podcast.
Thank you for listening to The Core Experience, your connection to community, business, and the people who make it all happen. For more details, go to corebank.com/podcast or email coreexperience@corebank.com. Brought to you by Core Bank, member FDIC.